Welcome back to part 2 of Janice Hardy, Writers Drinking Whiskey. You'll see the intro here in a moment, and then we'll get right into Janice reading from her delightful young adult novel. See you in a minute. Your literary happy hour.
Fun show.
I want you to find the next author you're going to love.
On a more serious note.
Welcome to the whiskey bar.
Threw my hands up like, you know what the...
Whatever happens, probably will.
So what are we drinking? Go ahead and transition over to your writing.
Sure.
So do you have something you could read for us today?
Yeah, I figured I would, since this is, grown-up stuff, I'd pull something out of Blood Ties.
Okay, awesome.
So I don't know how much I should read or how much. I know reading for a while can sometimes people drone out, but I'll read a little bit.
So I would, you want 5-10 minutes easily works if you want to cater to it. It can be shorter too, but I've had kind of anywhere in that range, and that's all. I think people love being read to. I hope one of the things for this show is adults realize how awesome it is to be read to. we rediscover that on mass here, but yeah, if you want to read kind of 5 to 10 minutes,
okay,
completely up to you. That'd be perfect.
All right, here we go then. Okay, so the child was pure evil, no doubt about it, the bane of the entire prosthetics ward, so naturally they dumped her on me. Being the new gal anywhere had its share of drawbacks, and Andrews Medical Center was no different from any other hospital I'd worked at, hence the Saturday shift and the problem patient hazing. For 5 days, I'd put up with Daisy's faux woe is me show, even though I'd stopped falling for that trembling lip and tear-soaked eyes act on day 2. I know it hurts, Daisy, but you can do it, I said, voice level. One did not cajole the devil child lightly. You don't know anything, Miss Legs. Not her best rejoinder, but I admired her skill at avoiding repetition. I knelt beside her and placed a hand on her shoulder. I know if you don't do your therapy, you'll be stuck in that wheelchair. I tipped my head at the chair, crammed into the corner next to the therapy stairs like it had pissed off its father. Put your other leg on and let's get to work. Hate these things more than I hate you. She glared at the prosthetic she hadn't yet put on as if she could make them burst into flames by sheer will. So don't let them win. Her glare shifted to the floor in front of her, and I mentally crossed my fingers. 1, 2, she made it to 5. They're not alive. They can't win anything, she screeched, swinging her leg at me. I braced for impact. You're so stupid. Go away. I granted her 2 hits, then caught the leg in both hands and jerked it away from her. I was all for catharsis, but those things were expensive. Daisy, put your leg on. No, I hate it. The newer patient shot her sympathetic glances while the regular rolled their eyes and shook their heads. Many a physical therapist had fallen to Daisy's mighty tantrums, and she'd gone through every assistant on the floor. I was a little surprised they hadn't saddled me with her sooner, to be honest. It would be quite the coup if I managed to get her walking again. To do that, though, I'd have to stay. The travel aspect was a big part of being a traveling physical therapy assistant. 13 weeks, then it was off to a new town, new hospital, new set of faces, and all the security life on the move brought me, even if it did seem safe here. Besides, nice as Fort Lauderdale was, it was half a country away from Dad and the call I'd been dreading for far too long. Still, I liked it here. Enough that I was on my 3rd temp rotation and actually knew most of my coworkers' names. For the first time in my life, I actually had a life. And Mrs. Johnson had even asked me about staying on permanently. A permanent home, permanent life, no more running. Is that even possible? Dad would say no. I wished I could say yes. Sighing, I dropped the prosthesis in Daisy's lap, and a hint of sweaty neglect wafted up from it. Someone wasn't keeping it clean, but that was an argument for another day. Okay, if that's what you want. Seriously? She peeked up at me through her protective shield of blonde hair. It's your life. I'll get your chair and you can go. I turned my back and headed for the wheelchair. Yesterday, tissue paper flowers had been taped to the handles, but only a few bits of torn paper remained. They shone bright against the hospital beige walls and a poster for the weekly amputee support group. She let me reach the chair this time. That was new. She'd never struck me as a quitter, despite the tantrums and the attitude. I flipped the chair around and wheeled it back, locking it down in front of her. All yours. Summoning the melodrama only a 12-year-old could muster, she dropped her leg to the floor, ripped off the second one in record time, and flung herself into the chair. I hate you. Maybe she meant me, maybe the chair. With Daisy, it was hard to tell. Take care of yourself, kid. I ruffled her hair for good measure. Stupid physical therapy, she muttered, rolling away. She slapped the wheels with every push. Determination, thy name was Daisy. If only she'd channeled that into learning to walk again. One of the other PTAs, Libby Torres, caught my attention from across the room and raised an eyebrow at me. I could almost hear the supportive, "You good?" that had started plenty of conversations my first week here. Her friendly tenacity had led to a bunch of dinners and a lot of laughter, and shockingly enough, an actual honest-to-goodness friendship. It had been years since anyone had been that nice to me at work. I wasn't sure anyone had ever put any effort into being my friend. I never lived anywhere long enough to make friends. I smiled and waved her off, a silent thanks for the backup. It's fine, my casual head toss said, but Daisy had never gone this far before. I'd only been working with her a short time, but I knew the type. Hell, I'd been the type. Come on, devil child, turn around. The pity me routine was a load of crap, and we both knew it. On our first session, she dug her fingers into her chair arms every time her mom fussed over her, as if she were a delicate little flower no stronger than the ones taped to her chair. Mom's idea, of course. The third time her dad had atta-girled her, she flipped him off when his back was turned. She made gagging motions throughout the entire "she's such a brave, brave girl" speech. I didn't know about brave, but she was pissed, and it wasn't over losing her legs. First person to figure out why might be able to help her. She rolled on, still no signs of stopping. I couldn't have read her wrong. She was a fighter for sure. She needed an enemy to fight, and it couldn't be her legs. She'd never accept them if they took the brunt of all that anger. 5 feet from the elevator, she stopped, her head cocked to the right, the tiniest bit, and I caught a flick of her eye checking up on me. Atta girl. I walked into her field of view and picked up her legs, then turned towards the trash bin on the far wall next to the nurse's station. A cute guy in a cheap suit glanced our way while Nurse Williams eyed me over her bright pink sunglasses with all the disapproval of a foreman behind schedule. Please, as if I'd throw away perfectly good prosthetics. The frown reminded me of Dad, though, and the worry I'd been fighting all year chipped at my tough love facade. Not here, not now. Focus on Daisy's pain, not yours. I reached the trash bin, pushed open the lid, and wrinkled my nose. Someone had had fish tacos again for lunch. I made a show of trying to find the right angle to shove the legs in. Come on, cry uncle, kiddo. Miss Harper, wait, Daisy said softly. Yes. I heaved a sigh as dramatic as hers and turned around. Need something? Daisy scowled at me, her shoulders stiff, pouting like a pro, and clearly wanting to tell me to go to hell. But I had her. I'd passed whatever test her parents kept failing. She rolled over to me and held out her hands. Fine, I'll do the stupid exercises. Suit yourself. You paid for the full hour. I wiggled one of her legs. You ordered the extra crispy 2-piece, right? I damn near got a smile. Just give them to me, she muttered. She shoved herself past the guy in the cheap suit and nearly ran over his toes. He didn't even glance at her, just kept his gaze on me. Grace Harper, he said. Short, clipped, not a question. I froze for a second longer than I should have. Daisy had already identified me, so it wasn't as if I could say no. Yes? May I ask you a few questions? I gestured at Daisy, glowering at us from a minimal safe distance. If this guy screwed this up... Sorry, I'm with a patient right now. It'll only take a minute. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a yellowed piece of paper. Nurse Williams shot me a look that said, keep it short. I planned on it. And you are? No badge, but he acted like a cop. Hopeful yet wary blue eyes hinted that he'd seen things he wished he hadn't. His black hair had a distracted scruffiness to it, neat on the back and sides, a tad long on the top. Almost a professor vibe, though he couldn't have been older than 30. Nate Kavanaugh. Are any of these names familiar to you? I don't have time for it. Please, Miss Harper, a woman's life is at stake. He held the paper closer. I took it. Not paper, something thicker and glossier, even though it was yellowed and old. It reminded me of the scrolls I saw at a museum Dad took me to once. 8 names were listed in delicate script, 4 names crossed off. The ink looked just as old, faded, and dark red, except for the name on the bottom. That one looked brand new and in bright blue ink. Why is my name on this list? I asked, chest tight. That's what I'd like to know. The first 2 names on the list were so faded it was tough to read them. The top name was crossed off, but the second one wasn't. I squinted closer. Rebecca Anatelli and Hannah Anatelli. All the air vanished from the room. Miss Harper, Kavanaugh said, do you recognize another name? I'll stop at that point.
That is awesome. You know what I love so much about listening to you read that just now? And I partially love this in general. I really love like well-written dialogue. Especially in fiction, like in the written form, because like you can hear it on TV, right? And it's even more important in some respects. But when it's done really well in the written form, you get all that interiority, all that like feeling. So even though she wasn't saying a lot, and it was mostly the young girl kind of quipping back at her, like saying things back, you get so much of both their personalities. And so much of who they were just now, just in that little, however long we went, 5-10 minutes that we went, you get such a air of personality for both of them, just on how they reacted to each other and what she's kind of thinking and how that's going. That God, it has it makes you want to like just keep going. So I mean, if you want to go for another, if you want to just recreate the audiobook right now, that would be fine.
No, I know it's tough. It's like, where do I stop with that one? That's a mystery right there. It's kind of getting into the mystery. The moment changes her life.
Yeah, and I think that was a brilliant place to stop. But yeah, I mean, I have a whole bottle of the Sexton here that I need to get through. But that's awesome. So, what compels you to write? I mean, I know it's fun, like you clearly enjoy it, but what really compels you to get into? And you write, I always forget YA young adults, and then you write adult things. Is it different reasons for both, or is it the same kind of drive? Or
it's the stories that come to me, and they get into your head, and like you have to get them out. Otherwise, these characters are there and they live at you and they talk to you all the time. So you almost have to write them down. And I just love stories, and I love creating worlds, and I love just making these things up. I guess I have a very vivid imagination, and I like to play pretend. I've always loved stories. When I was little, my mom says I used to draw pictures and tell stories about the pictures. So I was a storyteller. I was a writer even before I could write. I've always loved to do that. And I feel like if I don't get them out, they just get bottled all up in there. I'm either going to tell them to people, and they're all going to get tired of hearing me talk about these things, or I need to write them which I think is pretty common for a lot of writers, kind of thing. And it's just whichever stories come to me. Like when I wrote The Shifter, I wrote it. I wasn't sure what it was going to be. I mean, I knew the story, and I knew the character was at that point. In the first draft, she was like 17. And I figured, don't know if it's going to be adult. I don't know if it's going to be one. I started writing it, and and then it was fairly clear early on that this was a young adult. And then when I sold it, they actually lowered the ages and turned it into middle grade, which was not what I was expecting, but that's what happens in publishing sometimes, kind of thing. And then, so it really is whatever. And I love reading middle grade and YA and adult. Like I read all kinds of things. And I always love, and when I was younger, I wanted to write for teens when I was like a teen and in my 20s and stuff. I think that's because back then you didn't have the breadth of YA that you have now. Sure. Like, yes, there were plenty of phenomenal authors and stuff, but you did not have, like, you had a tiny little, like 1 or 2 bookshelves in the bookstore was all that you had for the YA stuff, right, or for the kids stuff. And like these, you have huge rows and rows of books now. And
some bookstores you go to, it's the biggest section now. Yeah, like the biggest reader in our house is by far my 16-year-old daughter, Michaela. She outreads everyone, including me. I mean, just 2-3-fold.
That's great.
And just goes through. And why do you think, like, because I've noticed that I've talked with people that aren't writers and avid readers about this a little bit over time too, but it seems like there's that age where I'm gonna hastily and not clumsily bottle it, let's say 11 to 17, where you get a lot of really avid readers, right? That's where you get the Harry Potter groups, right, back in the day, and everyone, you get really great avid readers. They love it. It's a entertainment, an art form that they're really into, and it seems to kind of fade as you get older, until you I think you start hitting a certain age where the reading picks up again, but the bell curve almost seems like inversed, right? Usually the bell curve's like, boo, up. This time it was like, oh, it's up. Oh, now we're down here. Oh, we're back up again.
Well, it's been college, starting school, you have time, you're reading with school. School encourages you to read books. They've got your SARs or whatever. You got there's on lists, and you earn points and stuff if you're reading. So they encourage you to read. And then if you go off to college, or you go off into trade schools, or you go to work, you're very busy. You're either studying or you're trying to get your life together. Like those early adult years, you're just so busy with everything else in your life to get your life started. I don't think you have as much time.
Sure.
And stuff. So I think you lose a lot of the reading, and then back when you get your life back and you have more time, I think you get back into the reading again.
Right. Well, and I also wonder sometimes too is because I definitely felt this. I used to read a lot more than I do now. I still read. I joke, have this huge pile kind of behind me, like right immediately here. There's just a stack of books that, like, I'm going to read, and I will read them eventually. that I always add to, but I always add 2 books for every one I read, kind of situation.
Okay.
And it was really college where they start mandating what you read. Right? Like high school, they do a lot of, I think we call it advanced reader in the area we're at. And it's like, yeah, you read a book and you go take a little test on it and you get points.
Yeah.
And then it was college. It was, okay, this week we're reading The Great Gatsby. Next week we're reading Ulysses. And like literally like you're supposed to read Ulysses in a week. And like, I've tried my adult life. Like I don't think this lifetime I'm going to finish Ulysses,
No,
Sure,
yeah.
it's brilliant, but it's dense and I'm dense myself. So it's, it's a hard read.
Well, even if it was, like a lighthearted romance or something, if you're trying to read a book a week and all your other college classes, that's insane.
Right.
Like it's hard
It is.
to do.
Right. Yeah. So for you, and caveats aside, because I realize it can change per writer and over time for each writer. But for you, when you think of the writer, what's the writer's role like in the greater society? Like, what does the writer offer? Like, and I just mean you personally.
Yeah, just in general. Well, I mean, I think artists in general is to make you think, to entertain you, to share perspectives that you may not have thought of or seen before in any, however an artist chooses to do that.
Sure.
So I think that's kind of the writer's role is to, and depending on where they want to go, some are very much into the entertainment. Some have things to say and they need to get that out. Some are just about, here's a look at a world you may not have known about. I think, yeah, it's to entertain and educate and open eyes.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And so what about you specifically?
I like telling stories. So I guess I fall more into the entertaining and looking at things the way you may not have seen before. I like playing in the gray area, that morally gray area where the right thing might be doing the wrong thing, almost, kind of thing. Like The Shifter's a lot like that. It definitely plays in the gray area. And I like those moral quandaries.
Right.
And that's one of the things I like about writing for kids too, because you get to, so I guess my kids' stuff's a little different. I like the writing for children because it provides them a safe space for them to examine difficult choices. So they can kind of see how the thought process works and consider what they might do in a situation, even if it's fantasy and it's a situation they're never going to be in, there's still a sense of relatability with everything. And it allows them to kind of explore that without being put in that same situation themselves. So if they ever face something similar to it, they actually have something they can draw from. They have an experience, so to speak, that might help them. And more, or even if it's something they might be dealing with, they might see a character in a book dealing with a similar problem that they can relate to, and it might help them with something they're dealing with in their life. And I think that's a very powerful tool. And to do that and entertain and like not even have somebody realize you're helping them. Because anytime you're going out to preach with kids, it's like, forget it. If your goal is, I'm going to teach 11, listen, the book, forget it. Kids get preached to all day long. They don't want that.
I don't think it works any better with adults, actually.
No, probably not either. Girls don't like to be preached at either. So yeah. But it's nice. It's a very rewarding to do that.
Sure. Well, and as you said that, when you were first answering it, more generally, you had mentioned perspective. And that really kind of connected with me because there is that, and maybe this even goes back to a degree with what we were talking about with writers. Like I've gotten the question where I've gotten that same response where it's usually like people being unkind or inconsiderate. And that kind of ballpark is that maybe as adults, we need that just as much as that safe space to kind of examine questions. Because it seems like with modern society, those safe spaces, we keep dwindling them to where it's like you need to know the right answer right now all the time. And if not, we're going to be very angry with you, right? Like
Exactly. And what the spaces people live in are getting smaller and smaller with, there was a real old, remember the comedian Emo Phillips?
I think so. It rings a bell.
Kind of a little strange, a little weird voice. He has this bit And it deals with religion, but it's like, oh, what religion are you? Oh, I'm Christian. Oh, so am I. Oh, I'm Baptist. I'm this. And it goes through like the minutia, and then it gets down to like what church they're on or what day of the week. And they finally reach a point where they don't agree on that. It's slightly different. I'm on this church on this street. You're on the exact same church on 2 streets over. And he's like, heretic. Like, and it's that kind of thing. Is that we've gotten so polarized, and everybody, whatever you believe in, whatever you think, there is a space that you can find all these other people who are exactly what you do. So your opinions, your thoughts, your views are all reinforced, and you don't get exposed to other ideas, other views, other thoughts, and that can be very damaging.
Right.
And
and I feel like the algorithms, right? Like I just call them the algorithms now, right? But it's like you can go on, and I remember I'm not into social media at all. I literally barely spend any time. I always give this disclaimer. I know this show's technically social media because I'm going to put it on YouTube, which is by far the biggest social media site. But to me, it's me and you talking, having a good time. We're having a drink.
Well, I think there's a difference between social media, which is people connecting, and like there's so many YouTubers out, and this is a show. You're just you're putting a show out on a slightly different. You're not on a network. You're not on a cable channel. You're on YouTube, and I think that's the difference, because there are so many amazing shows that are out there on YouTube for people just like you, who it's like indie television. I like
that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
You're doing your shows. You're doing your material the way you want, and doing it in a distribution form that works for you, and other people can consume that. So I don't consider YouTube not the way you're doing social media.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I think that's a brilliant way to put it. But what I found was when my son was really into YouTube, and actually I remember he's very funny. That for the audience, right before the show, I always have a little bit of time, and I just talk with, like, me and Janice talk for a second, kind of ran things down, and my son. My family's very good about knowing, like, when I'm doing a show, I always let him know and things. But he came up and he had an orange and there was some yellow on it, and he thought that was bad. And he was like, "Can I eat this?" He thought he was being poisoned or something. When he was, I think he was about 6, he had wanted to be a YouTuber. And I remember one day he was in the back of the car and he was very distraught. He's back there and he's just like, I want to be a YouTuber, but it's too late. It's like, what do you mean it's too late? Like, well, I'm already 6 and I don't have any like subscribers, and just like, okay. And it was cute, but all my family was into it and I didn't pay that much attention. But then I started watching it, and I mentioned earlier, I love sports. I'm a huge Steeler fan. Actually, my little Steeler sign is not showing, but I have the Steeler sign kind of that-ish way. And I love the Lakers. I'm out in Los Angeles. Now, but so I got on and I would watch these shows, and like, they were great. I got a lot of content and things, but so quickly the algorithm boxed me in to where it's like, then it was fun at first because I get to find a bunch of new, like, interesting things. And then once I clicked on a few of them, then the algorithm was like, you only like this. This is encapsulating you. You get Steelers and Lakers and some history, like, because I liked some, why the Roman Empire fell kind of like videos, and they're all great. But it's like suddenly all of that outside stuff that I didn't know I liked started getting filtered out. And I think that happens with a lot of them, like Twitter, like whatever it is, they just start filtering out the stuff you don't like.
Yeah, there's some documentaries out there, because my husband's a professional geek, and the way some of those algorithms work, and the people who created them don't even know, because it's all this machine learning stuff, and they're doing things and they don't even know exactly what it is, and it's all designed to really suck you down that rabbit hole and keep you online and keep you clicking. And it gets to some really dark, dangerous places, and it works on those dopamine feedback loops kind of stuff and all of that, which is really, it's very scary and stuff. Like some of that, like some of these things that I saw those, and he's telling me stories, and I was like, all right. And I've never been a big social media person. I just don't have time. I just don't have time for it. Like, I'm very social. I think it could be fun. I just don't have time. to do that. But yeah, no, I think like definitely for me and for most writers, we throw those algorithms completely out the window because we research so many weird things. Like every once in a while, you just like want to click on your mic and go, NSA, I'm an author, I'm doing a book. Don't put me on any watch list. Because I'm looking up how to blow up forges or how to do, or I mean, like you look up all kinds of weird things, especially if you're like a mystery writer or something. I mean, like, and it just the sheer breadth of things. Like, so and especially if I'm like doing stuff on the blog and doing guest authors or something, I'm looking up like their books and getting their sites and their things. So algorithms Google doesn't have any idea what to do with me. Any writers, I think, because we have our fingers in so many pies. And they're just like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's hilarious. That was one of the questions I wanted to ask you because it's always really fun. It's just, what does your search history look like?
Oh, it's insane. It's crazy. I look up, well, especially because I write science fiction and fantasy. So, I was doing research, I'm writing a futuristic sci-fi private detective novel. And one of the things that I had to research was I was looking and doing research for sex dolls. The robot.
Right.
It was relevant to my story. And so that's a very strange thing to look at. And then like
the same reason it's on my search history. It's just relevant. I promise, honey, that's relevant to the story I'm writing.
Or I'm looking up plants, or I'm looking up climate change, or like the borders, where are the boundaries going to change, or I might be what's the best way to describe ozone, or like, I mean, it's weird. Like you never know, but it's like I need to find something, or I'm just curious about something because you look something up and you hear about it and you're like, well, gee, what is the difference between a swamp and a marsh? And I have to look it up. So that's the kind of weird things. I never know what my search history is the most bizarre variety of things. Yeah.
Well, and what's funny is this, a lot of the stuff I've written would fall into that literary fiction camp that's out. But my most recent collection of stories, A Fire for Christmas, was a satirical collection of Christmas stories. And my mega work that I've been working on here for the last 12 years is Pirates of Appalachia. And it's about it's like this distant quasi future where Pittsburgh a bunch of cities have seceded from the Union. So Pittsburgh started it. My family's from Pittsburgh, and God love them, and God love the Steelers. And because it's a satire, I'm always looking for like metaphors and similes and things that are just ridiculous and like absurd and funny, and they go out there. So I just look up the most random things all the time. It would be like, what's this? Like you mentioned, like sex dolls. It'll be sex dolls. It'll be this, like all these things. And like, look it up, and you would just think like I'm a complete, like, just Unabomber, sex crazed addict. Like you just don't know. But it's like, but yeah, you're right. We get to throw the algorithms out because they have no idea what to do with us.
Oh, it is. And you can tell, like, if you're looking like at Amazon, or you look at the way the advertisements come up and like on the thing and some of the things, and it's like, well, this looks like it would interest you. And they show you a whole list of books and you're like, no, none of those would interest me. It's just because I happen to be looking something up. Like,
yeah. Well, my favorite is, I love when I've completely foiled them, because like we have a pool, not anything grandiose or anything, we have a little pool in the backyard. And I used to have a pool guy come do it. And I was like, you know what? I'm home all the time. Like when we first moved, it kept turning into a swamp. And then it would take me 2 weeks to make it de-swampified. I know that's not a word, but that's what I'm going with. And so finally I was like, okay, pool guy. We did the pool guy. And I'm like, you know what? I think I can do it now. But I just need something that can kind of alert me. So I found
thing.
Yeah, I got the thing.
Little robot thing. Yeah, it like sits with the filter and it tests your water.
Exactly.
We have that too.
There you go. So I think the name of the one I got is Water Guru. I think there's multiple. Yeah.
It sounds vaguely familiar. That might be what we have too. Yeah, my husband found that, and it's like, oh, this is perfect. The same thing.
That's so awesome.
you get busy and then you turn around and then boom, your pool's green. And then it's like, oh man, and then it takes forever to get the chemicals all sorted out again.
Right. And that thing's awesome. It's just like, you need chlorine. You need this much chlorine. Okay, I'll go. Thank you, robot. I'll go do it.
Right, yeah.
And I keep getting advertised for it. I'm like, I already bought it. You guys are just wasting money now.
It is.
I'm not gonna buy two. I don't have two pools. I have one pool and I bought this already,
Yeah, see, if they better algorithms, it would be like, oh, he has a pool. Let's send him other pool-related things. But no.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So we had a lovely time chatting. So we're hitting like the last call, like portion of the bar here. We're going to close the lights off and everything. My favorite things to kind of ask is things that we can give back to the audience here. So do you have, is there a life hack or like some guidance that someone watching the show can take and just, it can be small. I think someone had mentioned like just take a walk every day. You get 10 minutes of sunshine, right? It can be small, big, whatever it is, but
there is kind of a life philosophy we live at, and I don't even remember. It could have been a comedian, it could have been somebody. I don't remember where we heard this, but we heard it and it made sense. Said when you have to choose things like what you're going to do or where you're going to go, always choose what's going to make the best story.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Because you end up having more fun, and that has served us well.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. Is there an example of that working out that you can think of? That's created a great story that you can think of?
Yeah, I don't know. Like we, I guess for our honeymoon, we didn't have a whole lot of money for it. So we were going to do something small. And we could have either like just gone to like, a little hotel on the beach or something, and done that. And my parents offered us their timeshare to go down to the Isle of Margarita off of Venezuela. And we weren't sure. And we're like, I don't know, maybe should we go? Maybe we should do this. It's like, well, it'll be an adventure. It'll be fun. It'll be a good thing. Let's do that. So we did that and it was a disaster. All right, 30 years later, it's a funny story, but it was a disaster. It was just awful, but it makes a great story. Like it's one of those things that anytime you're with friends or new people, whatever, and always that, where did you meet? How did you, that stuff always comes up when you're meeting new people. And this is a story we tell a lot, and it's just a funny story. It wasn't good to live through, but it was good there. And we could have played it safe, or we could have done what was crazy. So we did that.
Well, there you go. Yeah, that's always fun. I think people take that for granted. Like sometimes we're like, if every day of your life is easy, you have so little to talk about later on.
What's going to be the adventure? What's going to let you do something that's a little different? Like we'll pick where like we're not full on foodies, but we're this close. My husband loves to cook and I love to eat, so it works out great. But so we'll go like. And you're picking a restaurant. It's like, oh, there's a restaurant that, it has the one place, it has cactus on the menu. I've never tried cactus. Let's do cactus. Like, that makes the better story kind of thing. Like pick the thing that's different. Pick the thing you haven't done before kind of. So like we'll go to places because we've never even had that kind of food before. So let's try it. Or we've never done this before. Let's try that. And you have more, you encounter things you never would have thought of, and you can have fun doing things you never would have thought you'd enjoy. Like it's fun. It's delicious. I wouldn't have thought that. So
I wouldn't. I don't think I've tried it yet. I need to go gnaw on a cactus outside the house here. And that's good to know. Yeah, that's awesome. So beautiful. So if someone wants to get in contact with you, I'll add all of this to the show notes and the on my website on the YouTube, so I can put your website and everything on there. But if someone does want to get in contact with you or learn more, find your books, where's the best place to go?
They can either go to janicehardy.com, which is my author site. Although the author site does need a little love, it's just there. I don't spend a ton of time on that site. I spend most of it on Fiction University, or they can go to fiction-university.com. Pretty much, if you type in Janice Hardy, you will get the site, especially if you type in like Janice Hardy blog, then you'll totally get Fiction University, and all my emails and all my contact stuff is on there too. But
yeah, very good. So the writers should go to the Fiction University. Someone that wants to read the work, and that could be one of the same. they want to
Oh,
go
they
to
can.
Janice
And all my
Hardy.
book stuff, is on there too, as well. But
Okay.
yeah, if you're a writer and you're looking for anything involving writing, I've been doing the sites for, I want to say 13, 14 years. I started it 2009. Math is not my strong point. I was an art major, so yeah, pretty colors, not math. So yeah, so I've been doing it for a long time. There's like 3,200 articles on the site. It's everything from I'm a brand new writer, I want to start writing. Where do I begin? To I'm a career author with 100 books. What can I do to help further my career? There's an article on there for somebody. And if somebody doesn't has a question and they can't find it on the site, then definitely please email me and ask me, because I've run out of topics to talk about. So anything new would be great. I'd be happy to answer your question, and it would give me something new to write about.
Very good. Awesome. And then of course everyone can comment on the video and things here, and I'll if they come through, I'll make sure to filter over to you when the time comes. But thank you so much. It was an honor, having you on the show. This was a thrill for me. I feel so lucky because I feel like the guests are way too good for me on this show right now. So I'm a lucky kind of blessed man, and I'm honored. Thank you so much for coming on, and we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, sounds great. Well, thanks for having me. This was a blast.
It was. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, you too.